So tonight we have on tap, we have Mr. Dave Ellison, Whiskey 7 uniform. And he's been very active ham for over 47 years. In October 2020, a terrible fire destroyed his three-car garage building that served as his shack, shop, and man cave. And I will tell you that that's kind of where I'm at right now. I have the same thing. It says virtually nothing could be saved, unfortunately. So over the course of 2021, the building was completely rebuilt and brought back to life better than ever before. He learned many important lessons about fire prevention, escape considerations, and overall shack design. Most of these ideas can be applied effectively for almost any ham shack, whether existing or being considered. Tonight, Dave will show the graphic outcome and how he created a new space like a phoenix from the ashes. Please welcome from Portland Orchard, Washington, Mr. Dave Ellison.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I would ask right off the bat, everybody that doesn't need to be on camera, to turn your cameras off. I'm having some bandwidth limitation issues that are a little troubling. So if you don't need to be on video, I'm going to turn mine off here too. But I just wanted to say hello to everybody. I've got a very slide-packed presentation with lots of just hold questions and such to the end, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And before I shut my camera off, this is my shack that is behind me, and it will be kind of discussing during the presentation. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate the warm welcome and the opportunity to be here tonight. So stand by here while I pull that up. All right, so everybody just, any one person just say, yes, we see your screen?
Yes, we see it.
Yeah, it's up. Yes,
awesome.
We got it.
So if my audio breaks up during the middle of it, hopefully you'll get the gist of it when I come back out from the momentary dark out, but shouldn't be too bad. I've shut off my camera. So anyway, again, Dave Ellison. I've been a ham for a long time, novice in 74, general in 75, got my extra in 97 and became UUU back in 2012. And so what this presentation is going to be about is my shack fire and rebirth, the lessons that were learned on concepts and approach for a modern shack. It's kind of the design your ideal shack. So I was in a great opportunity to be able to design a radio room from the ground up. And I thought there were some good lessons here for other folks that might want to be in that, might end up in that situation either by need or by desire. So what we're going to cover in this is the shack fire that happened on October 25th, 2020. Lots of pictures of that. The fire, the cause, the immediate aftermath of the fire, and everything that it took to get through that mess. The clean out, and then ultimately the redesign. We've got some great little tidbits to show you on layout considerations and how I came to design the new shack and how it came to be what it is today. We'll cover issues of safety, the power, the cabling considerations, everything that you might need to kind of want to think about in a new shack, maybe stuff you haven't thought about before. And then the complete and final layout as it is today to kind of show you the considerations that were made during the design process. So it's an action-packed presentation with a lot of pictures, a lot of slides, and we're going to move real fast here. So so just to kind of give you a look, this is a view of the north end of our property here. And the shack building that we're talking about is right here in the yellow rectangle. That is my three-car garage. It's actually a four-car because one part is a carport, but that's where I'm sitting right now, is in that building. That is where the fire occurred. And before the fire, it was rustic but sweet. I really like the room here. I've long time been a Heathkit fan. Had a lot of Heathkit gear. We kind of ran from stem to stern. I've been into restoring Heathkit since I was a young man, and it stayed with me my whole life. And again, it wasn't a fancy radio room, but it was a very functional one and very large. We've never been put the car in the garage kind of people. So my wife very handily gave me the whole room to be my radio room. And we built it out to be everything that I wanted it to be without getting too crazy. We sheetrocked it. It was bare studs when we moved in, but it was still a little primitive. You can still see some bare steadiness over there on the far right where the library is. But it was a very cozy space, and I loved it a lot. And it gave me a lot of space to really show off my my slew of fully restored Heath kits, just about every Heath kit you could ever possibly want in a radio room. I also like to feature old radios that meant a lot to me back in the day, including old Kenwood radios. So there was a lot of stuff in this room, and everything you're seeing and you have seen, by the way, is all gone. This was all destroyed in a fire. This was kind of the man cave area of the space. Had our large screen in here and our little sofa, and we come out here and sit with the doggy and watch movies and things like that. Part storage and the usual stuff that people have in ham shacks. And then, of course, I had my main operating position, which is equivalent to where I'm at right now. But this was all the older gear, and you can see kind of the range there with the Ten-Tec Omni 6 in the top left, and the Kenwood, and the wonderful old Century 21 CW transceiver. And the only new radio I ever bought in my ham life is that Yaesu FT950 until the modern era, so to speak. So that was the center of my ham world, and again, everything you see in that picture is gone. That's all been destroyed. I also had my little workbench area that was at the back of the room that I put in Formica to make it kind of nice instead of the plywood that was there, and just had a nice little cozy area for doing restorations and radio repair work. And oops, wrong button. And also had kind of a little radio museum area where radios that had been restored and I could pull into rotation. If I got in the mood, I could throw the Yaesu FT101E online and play with that for 6 months or whatever. So it was a very nice setup. And you can see the picture above, that was my big K1T special event I did 4 years ago now for celebrating the 70th anniversary of the first electronic Heath kit. So very involved in the old radios and working on this stuff and restoring it over the years. And other radios came into play, at different times in the radio room where I'd bring in old Hammerlands and the Globe Scout and whatever to just keep it interesting and keep it fun. But then everything really changed on October 25th of 2020. I had been out in the radio room, and the CQ Worldwide sideband contest had just ended, and I was participating in it. And you can see on the clock on my IC 7300, it was 23:58. So it was 2 minutes to 5 o'clock local time. And wife was going to come out. We were going to bring the doggy out, and we were going to watch the Seahawks game that was supposed to start at 5 o'clock. It was going to be kickoff. And I happened to glance over at the big screen TV, and I even took a picture because I thought series. I had the wrong channel, so I ran into the house to ask her what the channel was going to be. So I took a picture just to prove it because I knew she was going to argue that point. Notice the two boxes with the yellow border around them there, and over on the right there's so I went into the house, and we were going to wrangle up some chicken and throw it in the microwave and bring it out to the radio room and grab the pooch and come out and watch the Seahawks game. And lo and behold, we looked out the kitchen window, and smoke was just while my wife and 7ANN was on the phone calling 911. And I may have just gone unstable there, so hopefully, at least it tells me it went unstable, so that's nice to know. So anyway, smoke was billowing out. Wife called 911, and at night, fire trucks galore. There's no fire hydrants out where we live, so they brought in 5 trucks to have plenty of water to throw on the fire. And we had firemen everywhere, crawling to place and going up on the roof and cutting holes in the roof, which put the fire out real quick because I learned they dump about 40,000 gallons of water into the roof to make the sheetrock collapse, and then it drops right down on the fire. The downside to that is it does this. Everything just, you have 40,000 gallons or more of water that just puke right down onto the floor. So these pictures, the fire trucks, that bright lighting is from the fire trucks that are still out in the driveway after they ripped the doors open to get in. And it was a rather heartbreaking scene, as you can imagine, with all the radios in there and just smothered in the water and having been exposed to 900-degree heat for 30 minutes. The first bay I didn't really show earlier, but that was where our refrigerators and stuff were. We kind of called it the kitchen, even though it wasn't. It was just the bay that we used for the fridge and the freezer and whatnot. And deep inside the radio room itself, that intrepid little wood stove that I had started right before the Seahawks game was still going strong. And that was my first thought, that, oh my God, the wood stove, something went wrong with the wood stove. And no, it's still burning. And in fact, at about 6:30, that's the fire marshal from the crew outside came inside, and he's kind of looking around, not really investigating, just kind of thinking, did that cause the fire? That's me on the left, sort of in disbelief at what had just happened in really just less than an hour, that it had gone from that beautiful, nice radio room to this horrible mess. And not only did the fireplace keep on going, I actually had to get the firemen back in here. I said, hey, could somebody please put the fire out in the fireplace? Because it was just so surreal to see that intrepid little wood stove still trying to make heat out here, despite everything that had happened. So the next morning is when the reality kind of set in of what really had happened in there. And if you look, at the big blob there on the left, that's the big TV that has fallen over, and you can see the blue book down on the shelf there, just to kind of put things in perspective of everything that had just melted and caved in the fire. And as I moved around the room, I started, realizing that the enormity of it was, that this was pretty much, even though it was less than a 40-minute fire, that the fact that everything was completely drenched in water. Some of those Heath kits had a full gallon of water in them, and it had to stay there for 2 weeks before the insurance company would allow me to move anything. So what wasn't destroyed by flame and heat was destroyed by that acidic, nasty, chemical-laced water that was used on the fire. And here you can kind of see where the ceiling really collapsed down into the center of the room mostly, and dumped the insulation down on top of the room. And you can also see the ceiling lights and the heat that melted the plastic of the LED lights and created those long trailers down in plastic, and then all the goop and gunk on everything. And of course, where the ceiling collapsed through from the weight of the water, just from the 40,000 pounds of water that just caused the sheetrock to just collapse and dump the whole room into the middle. The destruction in some areas was absolutely complete, down to just absolute ashes. And by this time this morning, the next morning, this is the fire inspector who's actually in the room looking at the potential cause of the fire. So here's another view of that same area. And what's interesting, if you look at those white cardboard boxes, if you remember back from that picture earlier, where I said, remember those white boxes, something caught his eye immediately, and it's the unmistakable V pattern of the flame burn, which almost universally points straight to the cause of the fire, is at the apex, the lower apex of that V. And if we go back to where the TV was with Mr. Baseball, you can see right behind that TV is where that red arrow is pointing. And that wire coming down the wall I showed you earlier goes right to a power strip that was right behind that TV and was running it. And so here you can see that's the fire investigator, and he's pulled that power strip up and he's holding it in his hand. And what do you know? There it is right there. That is the cause of the fire. Is that one stupid little $9, $8 cheap Chinese piece of crap surge suppressor power strip. And the little hole on the side is where the flame shot out and caught that whole row of boxes and the carpet underneath them on fire. And the reason for that is there's a device in these cheap surge suppressors that are called metal oxide varistors, which under themselves are not a bad device. But they do have two modes of failure. One of them, that is the preferred mode, is they just open. And when they're exposed to a strong surge, they open, become an open circuit. Unfortunately, they have another very nasty mode of failure, and that is that they burst into flame and they become little flamethrowers as the semiconductor compound inside of them bursts into flame, and it shoots out as if under pressure. And in this case, it blasted right through the side of the power strip case. And it started the fire of any kind. Not good. It's just, we'll cover that a little bit later, but not a good thing. So you're looking right there at what caused well over $100,000 plus of damage, is that one stupid little power strip. That I chose to put in there. And that unto itself was another nightmare, because it was 2 weeks later before I was allowed to go in by the insurance company. And of course, the acidic water had done its damage. The place was a toxic zone. So I had to use and we all had to wear chemical gloves and boots, and it would burn your skin if you got it on you. It was just really nasty stuff. So imagine radios filled with that stuff, and all the radios were in fact filled with all that corrosive goo. So we just kept plowing our way through it. We had a couple of volunteers with rakes and shovels and wheelbarrows, and just started hauling everything out that we could. The vast majority of the stuff, we would all end up out on tarps to be photographed. You can kind of see on this view, there's the carport over to the left where we stored a bunch of stuff to get it out of the fire zone. We had dumpsters in, we were hauling stuff into dumpsters, and then in bins of things that could potentially be claimed for insurance because they could be photographed and identified. And then, of course, the big heartbreaker really is stacking up all of the radios and all the radio devices, all those years of my life spent restoring. Every single one of these radios had been restored, and new capacitors and tubes and the whole 9 yards, and repainted cabinets on all those Heath kits. And it was just this mind-boggling array of equipment, and all those little colored dots on there, that's our inventory system for the insurance claim as we went through it, itemizing everything. But it was heartbreaking. It still is. It's still really hard to look at a lot of these pictures. And it's just, a lot of it is, just like you'd imagine, just random samples here of, how the Salvador Dali effect takes over on things that were in the heat zone, and it just absolutely melted everything. And what it didn't melt, it destroyed chemically. So great case in point, people say, well, those Heath kits don't look so bad. Never mind that this case had been freshly repainted. It was like in brand new condition physically, and it was fully functional. But if you see all the rust that's going on and all the grunge inside there, that was just from sitting. This particular SB401 had about half a gallon of water still in it 2 weeks later, and that just destroys everything inside. So this all led up to just having a clean slate, and this is where we get into sort of the part two of this, where we get to start all over again, and we have a room that looks like this. And what are we going to do with this space, and how am I going to maximize it? We were very blessed that the structure was saved, and that was because of the cutting the hole in the roof and dumping all the water. You can see there's still a bunch of burnt ceiling joists that were ultimately replaced later, but the four walls remained, and they were able to contain the fire to the contents. So it's a win-lose situation in a fire. It's a lose-lose, but they were able to save the structure at the cost of letting everything inside become the victim. So that's the choice the firefighters took. So starting to clear it all out, replacing the damaged wood, and then we got the contractors in to do all of the treating of the wood that survived, and making it so we wouldn't smell that horrid acrid smell. And this is where it starts to get kind of fun, because this is where we really got into building the new design, my wife and I, of the new radio room. And so anybody looking to design a shack, there's a great program you can get on Amazon. It's $14.99. It's called Sweet Home 3D. It's a PC download. They don't have it for Mac. But it's super intuitive, easy program for laying rooms out of any kind. And it's a little cheesy in that you have to use a lot of the furniture things that they give you to choose from, but it gives you an ability to grab objects and put them into a space and kind of move them around and try to figure out what you want to do with a space. And so all of last winter, I went through this process of taking this software and laying out my idea of what the room should look like. And it gives you this great way to do a 3D modeling, and you can move things around and move the furniture and, you know, change everything about the room. And it lets you really try to visualize a space. And so a lot of the ideas I'm going to show you in this are aimed at people, even if you're redoing a room in your house. It's a fun little piece of software, Sweet Home 3D, have nothing to do with the company. And even if you have to live with their kind of cheesy examples of furniture and whatnot, you can lay out windows and peer through the windows and figure out where the skylights are going to go. And it's a great little way to design a space of any kind, not just a radio room. But, you know, it lets you just completely build a design for a space. Right down to the fact that I knew that I wanted to use that first bay that used to be with that pseudo kitchen space. We wanted to actually park the car in there. So using the software, you know, we were able to, you know, plot the line that I had figured in the model and then lay it out with a board in the room and say, does that work? And pull the car in and open and close the doors. And we were able to kind of size everything up. And, you know, then as we moved along, we were able to, you know, just expand that wall and start building and get the space laid out. And ended up changing out the windows to go with better windows, and cleaned up the front of the place to cover the carport and set up a new man door to get into the room. So this is where the real shack design starts to really kick into play. We've got the space done. Things to think about for building an ideal ham shack. You know, what are your plans for cable entry? And I had struggled with this for years, as many of us have. And since I had a clean slate to go from, my lightning suppression box out back had survived the fire. I had to replace all the devices in it, but at any rate, the box survived. So I came up with this 3-inch, it's called an LB device that allowed me to cut a hole in the wall and bring the cables in. It's all installed. So on the backside is the lighting panel, then there's the LB where the cables come in, and this is kind of what you end up seeing on the wall, which in the finished radio room looks like that. So it's a great way to bring all the cables into the room. And one of the things strongly would think about what you're going to put in it. Think about the gear that's going to go there. And in my case, I kind of knew the gear that was going to go there. So I actually made scaled graphical images, had nothing better to do. So I sat on the internet and I scaled them down to where they would fit into. That just tells me about HDMI switching from my video switching system in the room. And I'm unstable again, waiting for my unstable to clear. There it went. And then I've got my boat anchor side of the room. You know, it's not exactly how it ended up being, but it gave me something important stuff like outlets. And I did not want to have power strips ever again. There are no power strips in this radio room. There's not a single one. So in my case, I decided that everything was going to be outlet based, installed by a professional licensed electrician. And so everything would be done professionally. You don't have to do that. I chose to do it because I could, but the idea being, if we can make it all be outlets and not have power strips, you're that much ahead of the fire game. And in my case, I actually printed out single gang and dual gang outlet images, and I stapled them around the room to get an idea and try to picture. So, you know, a lot of this is visualize what you're going to do with the shack upgrade and doing the pre-wiring and getting all this stuff in place. And this was a whole room process. We were dealing with the workbench area, which is to the right with those raw studs. That's where the workbench will go. Work all that stuff out. Think about things in the ceiling, speakers, lighting, anything that you're going to do in the room. This is a great time to think about all this stuff and get it all in and try to do it using the best, you know, installation practices that you can do. And data cable is dirt cheap. Cat6 cable is very, very inexpensive. So run more than you think you'll ever need, and bring it into place to be terminated into panels later. Just get what you can get in now and plan ahead for that sort of stuff. Another thing that you know, thinking about if you're doing a new construction like this is thinking about what about wall mounted screens. So I spent time thinking about that. What do I want to have in this room for screens? And, you know, if you look inside the circle there, I've added some extra 2x4s to allow for bracing for a mount that would later deal with a 43-inch screen that has my geochron on it, but allowing for the data cable and the power cable for that stuff. All stuff that's important to think about. At the other end of the room, that's the entertainment center where the big TV is going to go, you know. So spend a lot of time thinking about, you know, the data cable, the video cable, the audio cable. Where are you going to put speakers? Where are you going to put all this stuff? And a lot of people do these kinds of projects and they sheetrock it all up, and then they go, wait, where do I put all the cables? And now they've got cables running down the wall, and it's too late to fish them through because you've got insulation in the way. So it's a great time if you're building from scratch to really think about that kind of stuff. And especially in the case of, you know, things like big wall mounted screens, get some backing boards in there. You know, those are all 2x10s that I didn't know exactly where the mounting was going to go. I know it's going to go somewhere there, and that's pretty much where it ended up being installed to support that large screen TV that needs to go in that little cubby in the room with the adjacent sound system. So, you know, that's the kind of stuff that I'm kind of advocating in this, that if you're, you know, whether you're doing an existing room or you're going to cut out a hunk of wall and do some stuff and add some wire, think about all this stuff well ahead and be ahead of the game. Other little considerations, you know, in the case of data cables, make them perpendicular to power cables. So you're not running data and power parallel. So you don't get the noise coupling between the two cables. You're minimizing that as much as you possibly can. And same thing with your parallel runs, you know, keeping the data cables, which are blue, from the power cables by about 18 inches. Keep things separated in the wall space. So you're always 18 inches parallel and perpendicular to power. And of course, you know, maintaining all the required code requirements as well, of course. I wasn't going to have an amplifier at first, and I kind of bucked it. I've never had an amplifier in my life. But I decided, you know, I'm doing all of this. It's a great time. If you've got your walls open, and if you've never had an amp and you don't think you want one, all it takes is installing a 620R outlet, which will handle just about any amplifier that you could find out there to plug into the wall. I've got 3 of them. They're in series parallel on the same dual breaker. So I can put the amplifier in any of 3 locations, or 3 amplifiers on standby in any of 3 locations. But, you know, think about amplifier power and get that back to the panel as a separate circuit unto itself. You know, thinking about hookup and connection needs down the road. So in this case, I made sure to bring a couple of data patch panels close together, because by George, I needed to patch a couple of things from the left panel to the right panel. It doesn't matter what they're for. The point being that I was able to do it because, you know, it's stuff that I considered before the walls were covered up, where I didn't go, oh, darn, I didn't have a data cable going over to the TV to do this, or to going over to the main computer rack to do that. You know, stuff that you want to think about, you know, for future use. Another thing that I strongly advocate for in doing any kind of an electrical upgrade is label everything. And we all know the hassle of you want to shut something off in the radio room. You want to kill a breaker so you can work on something, but you don't know which breaker it's on. And by George, you go to the panel and you flip a breaker and it's the wrong one. And your fussiest computer in the whole world goes down because you shut off the wrong breaker. So I made sure to painstakingly label everything so that I know the breaker numbers of every light switch, every outlet, the 10 circuits that feed all those 58 outlets I have behind the operating thing to a power panel where I just used my regular computer printer and a template I made myself to just make nice little labels to put on every single breaker position that tells me exactly what everything is. So when I want to shut off the amplifier circuit, I know exactly where the amplifier circuit is. If you have to use power system, despite my really bad experience with power strips, but at least use metal ones. That way, if they have MOVs that fail internally, they won't flame out. They won't catch on fire and turn into into your room. So I bought these on Amazon. We got rid of over 40 such cords that were in the house. I lopped off the plug-in ends on every single one of them so that people wouldn't fish them out of the garbage and try to use them. Never use plastic power strips. And I say that absolutely unequivocally, that kind of a risk to use plastic power strips. Only use metal power strips that don't have that risk of catching on fire like the plastic power strips do. And if you are in a world of doing new construction, insulation's up in this case. This is my last chance to absolutely triple check everything. So I went through with a tone tester and a data tester, and I checked every single wire to every single destination. I had nothing better to do. So day after day, I'd go out and test other cables and make sure absolutely everything made it where it was supposed to go and with no errors in the wiring, because this is your last chance to do it before the sheetrock goes up. So it's a real good time to do that stuff. And especially up in the ceiling space where we had about, 3 feet of cellulose insulation blown in. And this is your last chance to do that. That white wire is his extension cord for his light. That's not me. All my wires are where they hopefully won't be tripped on by other people. Other considerations that I think are really important if you're doing an ultimate shack redo kind of thing is think about HVAC. Hot summers, cold winters. We put in a Daikin mini split that we keep set at 68 degrees year round. After about the first 2 weeks or so, it completely mellows out on your electric bill and it just churns along and you don't even hear it running. You just go in the room and it's 68 degrees on a 100-degree day and it's 68 degrees on a 30-degree day. It works amazingly well. And it's, I think in our pre-discussion earlier, I think we agreed it was an 18,000 BTU. My room is 20 by 30, but size it accordingly. But it's well worth the investment to do if you're at the stage of redoing your radio room from scratch. Other considerations that were important to me that you might want to think about, security bars on the windows. I wanted them. We're out in the country. We're in one of the counties that probably has a little bit higher crime rate than I would prefer, although not anywhere near us. So I wanted bars on the windows. I've got a lot of dollars in here, and there are cons. That's no longer a fire escape. And I did consider that. Trust me, I've got 2 windows and I barred them both over and they are no longer fire escapes. But I do have 2 doors into the radio room. I've got an escape into the garage and I've got an escape directly outside. So I have 2 ways out, and I figure that's worth the risk. But that's something you should think about, is the physical security. Just slow the bad guys down from physically getting into the room. Cameras, I've got them everywhere. $6.99 is not that much for a complete network video recorder system. I strongly recommend using PoE wired cameras over Cat 6, good grade Cat 6 cable. Because Wi-Fi, why add another field of RF energy into your space that you don't need? And why add a device that can be potentially wiped out if you are running an amplifier and it just happens to find some resonant frequency that messes with the camera? So I went with PoE hardwired cameras, and they work fabulously. In fact, I'm able to view my entire 16 camera home and radio room all on my cell phone, or on any computer anywhere. I can log in anywhere in the world and view my cameras, pull them up. I can play back video. Super, super simple to set up. And Reolink is the brand I use, but there's so many of them to choose from. But it's something to think about. Putting in good quality, consumer grade security cameras is certainly a good thing. And of course, burglar alarm systems. I mean, that whole system, that's what I have in my place. $90 for the whole darn thing. That's the keypad and the sensors and the siren. And I don't use most of it. I've got sensors on just the doors and the windows, and I've got the siren and the keypad. It's not monitored. It just makes a ridiculously screaming loud noise. It'll get the bad guys out of the room, but super inexpensive as things are considered. And it took me just an hour to program it. Once you get past the horrible Chinese English manual, watch a few YouTubes. They're super easy to do. So don't rule out that. Don't go stupid expensive and buy ADT and all that if you don't feel like you need it. You can do an awful lot of alarm for your own for a very small amount of money these days. Another thing to consider, do you have water in the room? Well, I do. This is where that big blue tank, that's our pressure tank for the house well systems, 23-gallon pressure tank. That's what gives us our water pressure as the water comes in from the well pump. And if that were to leak, that would be a rather bad situation, and it's all hidden away under that cabinet. So I put in some really screamy loud 90 dB water sensors called leak alerts that just sit on the concrete. And I have tested them. They work fabulously well, very inexpensive. They were $25 for a pair of them. So think about that. If you've got water in the room, consider doing some sort of a water alert so that you're aware of that kind of a hazard. And obviously fire extinguishers. And I advocate using the name, good brand. Kidde is one of the biggest brands. Some people say Kitty, but having been in the fire industry for years ago myself, it's Kidde. They're one of the best known brands. They are one that I keep at my feet in case a radio were to catch on fire, but it's a halon replacement chemical. But by and large, all of our fire extinguishers are Kiddes, and we've got them everywhere. This 6 extinguishers, 3 of them in here and 3 in the house, in all of the key areas. There goes my internet unstable again. Waiting. There, it's back again. So we've got extinguishers in all the key areas of the house where they're just within each. Never used a fire extinguisher? Go to a fire extinguisher company and ask to practice on one. If you buy one from them, I did just that, and they actually gave me a kit of fully charged, and we took it out back, and I had never fired one before. Then you know how they work. You know what to expect. You know what it's going to do. It's don't charge anything to learn, and I bought one from them, and I bought the others online. So then the last part of our presentation is just laying out the shack, and this is all the fun stuff where we'll wind down to the conclusion here. So we've got this big, beautiful room. Flooring is in, the walls are in, everything's in, and it's just this fabulous new space to come in and occupy. And so now you can see, putting that screen on the back wall and planning ahead to make sure I had backing for it, to where it was going to mount in and have access to the power and to the data that it needs. That's where that stuff really starts paying off in a really nice way. We did get the garage bay done. Car fits in just like that software predicted it did, right down to the inch. Everything was spot on, just like that $14.99 program from Amazon showed us it would. Where I laid out everything for the workbench with the outlets, I've got dummy load connections down below. Once again, laying all that stuff out beforehand pays off huge dividends in the end when you actually start putting this kind of stuff into place. And does it really fit where you thought? If you thought it through, you're going to just absolutely thank yourself. And none of that was difficult to plan ahead, nor particularly more expensive than doing it haphazardly. Think about things for like cabinets. Allow for cabinets. These are just cheap IKEA bang together yourself cabinets. Very inexpensive. Very easy way to get that storage above the workbench. All planned out ahead of time as well in that software. Operating tables. There's a lot of ways you can go around operating tables, and I know that we've all done them. We've used the inverted door over a couple file cabinets, old school desks, whatever. Since I was building this from brand new from scratch, I went with these really neat little tables from Home Depot. But you're going to need to look at those layouts that you did that show where all your radios go. If you're doing a larger shack or your one table, figure out what you really need. Pretty obvious thought, but there's a lot of options out there, and the build it yourself kind of stuff, I'm a big advocate for, because you save a ton of money by buying stuff that's knocked down, and you just bring it home and you spend some time building it. My lovely wife Ann in 7ANN, she was instrumental in helping build them. We had 4 of them to build, and it's one of those kind of jobs that takes more than one set of hands. And so she was just a super stormtrooper out here helping build the tables and ultimately to get them all in place and lined up where they're going to be. And what about equipment risers? So going back to those drawings, from earlier, where all of the equipment is going to go. And you could do really fancy stuff like a lot of people do with big fancy shelf units and stuff. But I thought, why not just basic do-it-yourself lumber? And so I kind of perused Lowe's Depot and came up with an assortment of different types of and dimensions of wood that are irrelevant to go into, but just what I could find that would fit the space I was working with, and bring them in and just mock it up. Use cardboard boxes as risers and lay all this stuff out and try to figure out where you want to put it and how it's going to look, and compare it back to your drawings. A really important consideration that I made is access space behind the table. And, I've had people say, well, I only have a 12 by 12 or a 10 by 10 radio room. Fine, then use a 9 by 9 radio room and leave a foot behind everything, or use an 8 by 8 and leave 2 feet behind everything. And in a minute here, you'll see why that's the biggest single coolest decision I ever made in this entire radio room was allowing that access space. So here it's all kind of coming together, getting the pieces. They're just all laid in all their locations, kind of getting an idea of comparing back to my original drawings, where computers are going to go, where radios are going to go. Just kind of mocking it all up. Again, it's that curvy thing because it's a panorama shot. You can now see the geochron is on the screen in the background. And then just DIY, just some sawhorses and a bucket of clear wood finish, and all of those pre-cut pieces of wood that I cut and figured out how to put them all together. I'm not a carpenter. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And just figured out where all this stuff needed to go, tore it all back down again, and then stained it on a beautiful August day last year, and got it all stained, lacquered it, and then brought it all back in, and using my nail gun, just nailed it all together. So it was as all things considered, for the amount of space, it was a very inexpensive way to accommodate all the gear, just using 4x4s and a bunch of really some oddball lumber from Lowe's is what it really amounts to. So remember that access space behind. This is my gangplank idea I came up with that was an afterthought and a whim at the moment. Has turned out to be the most ideal thing I've ever done in any radio room ever. So it's just basic 12 by 1 pine boards with 2x4 14-inch spacers in between. Back out on the sawhorses to paint it, and Then I laid it out behind the operating desks so that each corner of the desks that form the big L of the desks have this plank system behind them that's on risers. And this is what it ends up being today. That, you know, it may look like a little bit of a haywire, but imagine that's almost nothing. You could do that with scrap wood, with just junk scrap wood. You don't have to buy new wood, but look at the benefit you get. Now, the downside, I suppose, is that every single outlet, every single plug, I've got a 10-foot industrial grade UL listed single out, $3 a piece. That was kind of an expense, but I didn't want to have the trip hazard, the danger of having cables willy-nilly going from the radios straight into the walls. So every single device, going back to my original planning, all comes out to its own separate service, the rear side of every single radio in the entire radio room. You can do that in the smallest of radio rooms. Another thing I strongly advocate in doing a radio design is I've got high and low level patch bays, and you can just do a high level patch bay or just a low level. By that, I mean, it gives me BNC connectors and cables rated up to 100 watts for all the radios, you know, the FTDX 101, the 7300, my boat anchor operating positions. Everything can be patched into patch 1 and patch 2 back to my antenna patch bay. I've also got a lower patch panel that gives me some 12 volts and other patching options that I can do for if I want to put a little QRP radio right at my operating desk. It can all just sit right there in the little corner here, right where I'm sitting right now, and be accessible. So, you know, it's those things that take a little of effort to plan out when you're designing a radio room that make a huge difference later when you want to use them on a regular basis. The patch 1 and patch 2 of that patch panel appear on patch 1 and patch 2 on this panel right there in kind of the center right. So now I can patch over, I can get into my power amplifier, or I can go, if I'm low power, I can go into the LDG tuner. I can go out to the TA33 beam or the 40 meter V or the 80 meter V. I still have a G5RV up there just to compare, just to do AV comparisons for fun. I've got switching options up there that I can engage a switch to do anything. But the idea being that it's all patchable. However you do it, just something that you really want to think about. Another important consideration, I think, in any shack design is make everything be at eye level. That's really important. You know, I see all these pictures on QRZ of people's shacks where they'll have monitors like way up over their head in the sky, and they're looking up to look at monitors, key monitors, and I just, you know, didn't want to do that. I would do with less gear if I had to have it that way. So everything in my shack, that red line is eye level all the way around. And you take it all the way around the entire radio room from the VHF quad over on the far left into the main HF operating position, all the way down to the boat anchor side. It's all at eye level for all the key gear, and everything that's above eye level is either just eye candy, it's rotating its way through, waiting for a chance to get on the air, or it's something I don't use that often. All the stuff that gets used regularly, it's all right at eye level. And another consideration that was actually brought up when I did another one of these presentations, where somebody said, "What are you using for a chair?" And I do a lot of contesting, and it's called butt in chair time, BIC time. And don't skimp on chairs. If you're going to skimp on something in a radio room, find something else to skimp on. I went with a really good grade Serta office chair from Office Depot. It's a couple $100, but it's a good chair, and it's the kind of chair you can spend a lot of time in doing radio. So the whole thing was finished in December of 2021, and this is basically what it's looking like right now as I'm sitting in it, talking to you guys right now. And it's all, it looks beautiful, it's functional, but it's all because of planning and thinking all this stuff through ahead of time to make sure that everything worked out the way I hoped it would in the end, and it certainly has. So I thank you for watching, and I'm sure that there will probably be some questions out there. So I appreciate everybody's time going through this, and there's my email there if you anybody wants to email any questions or anything, you can reach me as well. So I will unshare my screen at this point and open it to anybody that might have any questions about anything.
I have one question. I saw you had a lot of, like you said, 10-foot extension cords. Here, I went with it's essentially a power strip, but it's a metal workbench strip. It's like 1.5 inch cube, and there's sockets every 6 inches.
Yep, I totally get those, and I'm not in any way dissing on them at all. I totally, as long as they're metal, I'm good with them. I just chose to do it. I guess I was very knee jerk at the time when I was doing the layout because I just suffered the fire, and the idea of a power strip right then was so revolting that I kind of went the other direction. So I'm totally with you. Just don't use plastic ones.
Yeah, the other thing I did was my power strips don't plug into the wall. They all plug into UPSs. All my radios, all my computers, everything, the power strips plug into a UPS.
Yep. And those are all additional levels that you can do. I have those as well. I just opted not to. I mean, you get into doing a presentation like this, it has to be contained to about 45 to 50 minutes, and you can get into the weeds really, really fast. So I am totally with you on that. I'm a big advocate of UPSs. All my computer systems, I've got 4 different computer systems here in the shack, are all on UPSs. So I have about a 3 to 5 minute elegant shutdown time. If the power goes out, which it does quite a lot out here, I've got 3 to 5 minutes to go hit the mouse and do an elegant shutdown. 2 of them are on automated shutdown where they do it over USB and they just automatically shut themselves down. 2 others are discretionary because I don't want that happening without me doing it. But same idea.
My whole reasoning for using the UPSs was I cheaped out on the power strip. It does not have a surge suppressor in it, mainly because I know of what you're talking about. I mean, 99.9% of surge suppressors are MOVs.
Yeah, they are.
For 50 cents more, they could use GE semiconductor suppressor diodes, but that's 50 cents more.
Some do. Some of the better ones, Surgex is a really high end, very, very good unit. Some of the higher end APCs and Juice Goose is another good brand, Perma Power. I mean, there's a lot of good brands out there that do use, avalanche diodes and they protect the MOVs. They surge suppression, but it goes back to the fact that, my fire was caused because it was plastic. And
right.
if they're not plastic, that fire can't leave the box. May not do good things, and you may end up having other problems. I'm not saying that, but you're not likely to burn your building down like I did.
Well, one thing I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, I didn't see a ground system.
There's something in there. I want you to get one for each of us.
Yeah, my ground, if I put everything in this, there would be bonded. So every single, and I actually use all the ground screws on the back of every radio, goes to a ground bus that goes to the building ground that ties into the shack ground, that ties into the garage ground, ties into the house ground, and ties into the tower ground. So you can literally take a deal of my 160 meter Marconi, and you could take an ohmmeter from that ground radial and go to the very back of my barn and measure ground, and you will read about 0 ohms or close to it. I'm 100% ground bonded, soup to nuts, top to bottom, inside and out. And it's all per code. It was all done by licensed bonded electricians. So it was all part of the redo to really get finally totally up to speed on my grounding and make sure everything is absolutely ground bonded like it should be.
Hey, Dave, talking about insurance, I'm sure it was partly your homeowners. Did you also have any of the ARRL radio insurance? And then what all happened with that? Did you get any pushback from the insurance company about all of that classic gear?
No, actually, we were very fortunate. We're with State Farm Insurance, and I had a rider on the building that was more than enough to cover the structure as an outbuilding, and we were fine there. The reconstruction cost was about $68,000 for the building, And then for our homeowners, we had a $349,000 personal property for the entire house, garage, everything all at once. So we were drawing against that, and they were absolutely delightful. There was no qualms. As long as I provided photographs of the burned item and provided proof of what the replacement would be, and provided the time frame from when I purchased it to the time it was lost. There's a sliding scale that State Farm and everybody else uses. That replacement value insurance is based on when did you buy it. If you replace it, so for example, I lost a Drake TR7A transceiver that I absolutely loved, and I had bought that transceiver about 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years ago probably, for about $800, and it was completely destroyed. When they on the form they say age of unit, and I put 46 years. It was from 1978, so I put that, and for that $800 TR7, they gave me $40, and that's when my agent pulled me aside and said, "Well, wait a minute though. You got to report, when did it come into your world? When did you acquire it?" And the example he used is, if you had a 66 Mustang that you bought brand new in 66 and hadn't done anything with it, that's one thing. But if you have a 66 Mustang you bought last year and it's fully restored, that's quite another thing. And so once I learned that piece of information, the acquisition dates were what we used for all of the items that we claimed. And they treated us very, very well in it. They questioned nothing. I'm a brutally honest person. I know that I have to answer to higher authorities, so to speak. And so I'm not somebody to cheat, but they treated us brutally fairly through the whole thing. And it's been very, very easy to replace all of the equipment that was lost.
Follow on, I noticed from the pictures that you you were like a kid in a candy store with you being able to acquire new equipment. So that's the other thing is that you have this budget to go shopping. I noticed you bought some Elecraft, and there's a lot of Elecraft lovers here on our group too. But how did you decide what to get?
Well, that was part of the whole amount of time that I had all of last winter to think about this. And I decided I wasn't going to return to the path where I had hundreds of Heath kits, dozens and dozens anyway of Heath kits. And so I just decided that, when I was starting to see the insurance payoffs for all of those bazillion radios, that I don't want to go back there again. Where do I want to be? And I just decided I wanted to be much smaller, but have top end stuff. And I'm a fan of Elecraft. The main transceiver I ended up with is an FTDX 101 MP, but I would have ideally had a K4. And the amplifier is a KPA 1500. I just decided to go with really, really good stuff. But there's one philosophy that I really adopted through this whole thing, and it was right after the fire, about a month after the fire. My wife and I went out to a restaurant, and somebody had written on a chalk sandwich board out in front of the restaurant, and I took a picture of it because it was so poignant. It said, "Not all storms come to ruin your life; some come to clear your path." Wow, that's really poignant, because this fire actually cleared my path to an entirely new reality for what my radio room was going to be, and it solved a lot of problems because I wanted to kind of go in a different direction, but it's not all that easy to dispense with all that old gear too. So
Would you have even replaced a lot of that old gear? I mean, some of it would have been, how would you replace a Helicrafters?
Well, it's all still out there. Helicrafters at one time was a very big brand, and just like all the Heath kits. And I've just been very selective in what I've replaced, but there's virtually nothing. There were things that were lost in the fire that were irreplaceable, because they were personal. They were, I had autographs. I had, Ansel Adams autographed photography books. I had radios, Heath kits that were autographed by the actual engineer that designed it. I went back to Benton Harbor a number of years ago, and I met the engineers that designed the Hot Water 7 and the Hot Water 8 and the Hot Water 16. And I had them actually their work. Those are, I can get another hot water 7, but I can't get a hot water 7 that was autographed by Bob Furnow, W8 NDG, that autographed it for me. So it's that kind of stuff that's not replaceable, and the family items and things that were very personal. And that was the hard part. That was really the hard part. The ham gear, that's kind of inconsequential because I'm a glutton for ham gear. I can always find something cool, but I can't find something that has been with me for 47 years. So any other questions? I don't want to take any more of your time than I don't want to feel like I'm hogging your time here.
I just want to say thank you so much for sharing what was a very painful situation for you to help us know how to protect ourselves. So thank you very much.
Well, you're very welcome. And you've been a very, very nice audience. And my internet connection is being flaky on me again here, but I really thank all of you for the opportunity to present this, and I apologize for the glitchiness on the internet, but I think the bulk of it came through.
Hey,
And
Dave, I'm going to go and go on a hunt to replace all of my plastic power strips.
you know, one of the neatest things that I hear when I do these presentations, and after this fire, and after, if you go on QRZ.com, I'm a very active member there, and there's been several threads on this whole topic, and the people that have replaced their plastic power strips, the very next day, once we learned that, I went through the house and I ripped every single one of them out that day. Wife was crazy, like, wait. No, they're gone. We're just going to live without plugging those things in until I get metal ones. But it was just such an eye opener. In fact, I have that very power strip sits back over on the corner there as an object I can bring out when anybody's in the room, as an advocate for get rid of plastic power strips.
I take it you had to order most of those off Amazon or somewhere, or some electrical supply?
I bought them off of Amazon in case lots. They're a no brand, but I like the quality. They had good reviews. They do have MOVs in them, but they're very robust. They were $22 a piece, and I bought a case. I think 20 of them, 24 of them, I think were in a case, and I bought a whole case for, to replace everything that was in the house. There is no power strips in this room other than way back on the workbench on the very, very top, built into the workbench, is a metal power strip, but that's a 1943 U.S. Navy Bremerton Naval Shipyard surplus workbench. So I think it's probably going to be pretty safe from catching fire like my plastic Chinese power
Probably
strip.
don't even have an MOV in it. It's probably just a power strip.
It is just a power strip. And what I did on those ones I bought on Amazon, one of the reason I liked them is they are held together with screws, not rivets. So I went into every single one of them. And I just snipped the MOVs out. I just removed them, just went in, cut them out. And, the MOVs are an open circuit until they're presented with the surge. They just live across the neutral to ground and across the hot to ground. Sometimes the neutral to the hot, but either way, they're an open circuit unless they're presented with a surge. So I just removed them. So yeah, and be sure to have fire extinguishers. And have an escape route. That's the other thing. I mentioned at the very beginning that I had been contesting right up until the moment of the fire. And for contesting, I like to use my Heil Pro 7 headset. This is a replacement, but it's identical to what I had before the fire. These have about 90 dB of sound isolation. And that fire happened really, really fast, probably quicker than I would have noticed the smell, because I had a wood stove in here and I had just started the fire using paper. And so the wood stove was getting going and it smelled smoky in here in that delightful way that fires, that wood stoves do. And I was just finishing the contest and I took my headphones off to make that little screenshot at the very beginning of when the fire started. And that's when I went into the house. If that fire had started, say, a half hour earlier, while I was still actively contesting, and you know how contesters are, 5'9" QRZ, the contesting shtick, wearing 90 dB isolation headphones in a room that already smells like smoke, I very easily could have been caught in the fire because I wouldn't have been aware of it. And the fire started at the only entrance to the room. I would have probably been caught. So that's part of the reason that I do have the 2 exits out of the room now. And it was difficult to put bars on the windows thinking those are my alternate exits, but it is a decision I made, but I still have 2 exits.
Maybe not in Washington, but in Texas at least, when you put bars on a window like that, they're required to be able to be unlocked from the inside for a fire exit.
In a residence, this is a garage.
Ah,
Same law here. It's in a residence. Yeah, you can't have bars on the windows that don't have locks. But the problem with those is that the bad guys know how to open them. Those aren't security gates to the degree that these are. And I looked at that option, but I just didn't like the build quality. They're all really cheap. They're honestly, they're really meant more for keeping kids from crawling out windows is really what they're more all about. They're keep pets from jumping out. You open up your window on a summer day to keep your 2-year-old or your pet from jumping out a window. They're not really meant to keep somebody out. And these are wrought iron, and they're in with 6-inch lag bolts. They're not going anywhere. But
Hey, Dave.
yes, sir.
Do you have smoke detectors in your shack now?
Yes, and that's another one of the things I could have put in the presentation, but yeah, I've got multiple smoke detectors. They are monitored. The house system is monitored, and they are on the monitored system back to the house. The burglar alarm isn't monitored because the county I live in, residential burglar alarms is 4 to 6 with a monitored burglar alarm in Kitsap County. In pretty much anywhere in the U.S. anymore. Fire alarm they will respond to, but burglar alarm they won't.
Have you thought about putting just a single station smoke detector with a strobe light on it in?
Oh, that darn internet just cracked up on me again. Say that again, Steve. It broke up right when you said, have I thought about a what?
Thought about a single station smoke detector that has a strobe light on it.
I hadn't. That's actually a very good idea now that you mention that. Since I am frequently completely deaf, I will take that advice, and it's an easy enough thing to add, and just add a single station strobe light smoke detector that would give me the bright flash.
Yeah, it's used for hearing impaired.
It's a great idea. Thank you for that, Steve. Very good idea.
Hearing impaired in
definitely.
noisy environments.
Yes. So, well, in parting, for those that didn't see, I'll just show you for anybody that wasn't here, just so you can see it, just so you can kind of see the whole room here. I'll switch over to my my ceiling camera, so you can kind of see how the whole room, came to be. Why did I put a wide angle ceiling camera in? I don't know, because I could. So just something I decided to do, but that just kind of shows you what the whole room looks like in here, and it's kind of a fun view. All right, folks. Well, unless there's anything else, again, my call sign's W7UUU. You cannot miss me on a Google search. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm all over QRZ. I'm one of the administrators there, and one of the longtime heavy users. And so if anybody thinks of any questions or anything at all I can do to answer any questions, just shoot me an email. Not hard to find.
Thank you, Dave, and good contesting.
Well, thank you. What can I say? I the only ones I've ever won are Washington QSO parties, and it's I've won 3 different counties, and then 2 years ago, or the year of the fire, right before the fire, I won the state of Washington for CWQRP, and I won last year for CWQRP. Just this last September, but unfortunately they no longer have that as an official award category. I was just the high score for CWQRP, but they don't have it. I don't get salmon anymore for Salmon Run. But anyway, I'll see you on the internet or on the airwaves. Take care, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dave.
Dave.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Have a good night, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.